There we go. Now it's recording. So, yes, I met Justice some years ago at a Dr. Greer event. And since then we have met again and again under the stars on wild adventures. And a few years ago, I met up with a handful of friends it was in the depth of winter in the high desert of New Mexico. And we arrived there and we eagerly, on the very first night, we all unpacked our winter gear and put on hats and gloves and set up the team in a circle. We only had our eyes showing and we sat on our chairs, and Justice was standing and leading us in a puja ceremony. Now, I've been to Greenland in the winter, but I tell you, it was warmer there than in New Mexico on that night. And when Justice gave us the option of standing with him during the ceremony, no one moved. We were frozen to our seats. That is how cold it was. And as soon as he was done, we all admitted to wanting to go inside. Now, the only way I can think of that Justice was able to stand there for so long is through the light and the warmth that he holds in his heart. Justice is a man of many, many talents, and he does a lot of behind the scenes work on the global CE5 level. And today, not only will he show us the beauty of CE5 photography, but also I know that you will all feel what a remarkably evolved and beautiful soul he is. So it's a great honor, a great privilege to have Justice with us today. Thank you, Justice, for being here. Now I've got to find you. There you are. You're unmuted. It's all yours.
Oh boy, Una, are you sure you were talking about me? What a wonderful introduction. Thank you so much. And thank you, Una, for putting together such a wonderful community here and such a great way for everybody to get together. You know, the important thing nowadays, especially with everything going on in the world today, is that we spend time in higher consciousness and sending this healing energy to the planet. Part of that we do through CE5, but a big part of CE5 is just that. And I think it's important that wherever you are, even if you're by yourself, spend time. Now that we have time at home, it seems like most of us, at least here in Texas, they've closed most of the restaurants and asked us to stay in small groups and practice social distancing and all these different things that are new to us. But it gives us time to meditate a little more and spend some time in quiet meditation, and it's really a healing time for us all, really. So I think that's wonderful, and thank you for putting this together, because it's great. It's so exciting to see so many people all over Europe and that are interested in CE5 and are out doing this. I see some names. I know there, Ricky, of course. Hey, Ricky, it's good to see you. I see Josh. I see Michael from our Texas group, and probably a bunch more, but I don't see everybody's picture, so I can't tell. But welcome everybody. So what I'd like to do today is we don't have, 1 hour is a limited time to talk, and I want to spend not all of that time talking about technical details of photography, because that would bore even a professional photographer after a while. So what I'd like to do is talk a little bit about the basics of photography, just a few minutes, and some of the special challenges we have in doing photography at CE5 events. And what I'd like to do is kind of intersperse that with pictures that you may or may not have seen that we've taken at either Dr. Greer events or on our own. We have our own. I think you guys saw Marcel last time. Marcel, are you here? I don't know if he's here today, but he put together a kind of a national team that we've been on, and we've got some pictures from that, and just pictures from CE5 over the last 4 or 5 years that I've done that really shows some examples of what we're talking about. Now, the first thing about photography in CE5 is it's easy to take a picture in the afternoon of a CE5 circle or at a birthday party of somebody because there's a lot of light, and that's easy. You can take any snapshot and do that. The challenge we have at a CE5 event is not only that most of them are held in the middle of the night, so there's special challenges with that. A lot of the things we're taking pictures of are interdimensional and only visible partly sometimes. And that makes it even a more challenging task. And some of the pictures we've gotten, I can show you or tell you about the techniques we used. And sometimes it was just sheer luck that we got them. But I think other times we've asked the ETs to help, and they've showed up and helped us get the photos. So let me start by saying that, first of all, if you're starting out in CE5, don't do photography. Just concentrate on the contact protocols, the meditation, and get comfortable with that first. And the reason I tell you that is that over the last 4 years at CE5 Texas, we've had many CE5 events where we invite the public out, and they'll come out and do CE5 with us. And in the early days of this, we started having all kinds of interesting contact things happen. And then one day I decided, oh, you know what? I should be taking pictures of this. And with no further thought, I set up a couple of cameras out there, and we had all kinds of, I had a full spectrum video camera going, all kinds of stuff. And the contact absolutely stopped. For like 3 months, I had these cameras all set up and nothing happened. And I was shocked because every single event we'd been to, we'd had pictures. I mean, not pictures, but we had contact events where people saw things or heard things or felt things and had this wonderful experience. And then suddenly with these cameras, it all just stopped. I couldn't even feel their presence. And I came to understand that, you know, something Dr. Greer said for many years, and I heard it on an academic level when he said it, and I read it in his writings, but it's not something that I felt or I truly understood until this moment, was that what's primary in this contact is your intention. Why are you out there to make contact? And in my case, I wanted to take the pictures because I wanted to promote our group in Texas and get other people interested and come out. It was a very shallow, you know, I really didn't think much about it. I didn't meditate about it. I didn't talk to ETs about it. However, later, when I meditated on this, and I realized I had never asked for permission even to take the pictures. And it was a very a changing moment for me because I meditated and asked for permission to take the pictures. And I assured the ETs that the purpose was to show our civilization that they're not alone and to increase interest in this. And it became a bigger purpose than just my wanting some pictures to promote our group. And I kid you not, as soon as I did that, we had the cameras out and I started getting pictures. And we started asking for help getting pictures, and we got more and more pictures. So first thing, if you're new to this, I wouldn't start with photography right away. I'd concentrate on your CE5 and your contact. And I had some amazing contact when I first started. And if we have time, I'll share some of that. But I want to get into some of the photography material first. So once we started taking pictures at the contact event here in Texas, I started asking Dr. Greer if I could do some photography at some of the national events. And of course, he let me do that. And we got some amazing photos. Before I start with that, let me talk a little bit about the basics of photography at a CE5. First of all, you can do this with any camera. I've seen amazing photos from a cell phone. And nowadays they have cell phones, some of the apps you can even get really detailed and change the shutter speed and all kinds of amazing stuff on these cell phones. So even if that's all you have, you don't need to go out and buy expensive equipment to take pictures at a CE5 event. Now I do have, and I started with that. I've got some members on our team in Texas that got some amazing photos with just their cell phone. Later, I was at a, well, I'll just tell you a quick part of my story first to lead into this was, since I'm an airline pilot, and because of that, we have about 15,000 pilots at the company I work for. And so our vacation has to be bid for a year in advance. And I could never match it up with a Dr. Greer event. So for 2 years, I wasn't able to go. So I read every book that he wrote and dived into all the free information online that he provides. And there's a lot of information there that tells you everything you need for free. And I did that and started doing C5 on my own for 2 years before I ever really met with a group, and had some amazing contact experiences there. And then one year I was looking and I got an email, or I was on a website for the New Zealand team, Jeremy and the New Zealand team, which are a wonderful team out there in New Zealand. If you ever get a chance to go there, highly recommend that. Ricky Butterpass is usually out there and leads a lot of the trainings out there. And I went when was that, Ricky? The first time, was it 3 years ago or 2 years ago, something like that, I think. I forget, you can't really talk. He's waving. It was about 2 years ago, I think. We went and out in the beautiful New Zealand countryside there, and I had my kind of first introduction to being with a team. And that's where I met Marcel and Ricky and some others. And Marcel, who you saw last month, is an excellent resource for photography. He kind of got me started in this, and he's my go-to for getting questions answered when I need them answered. But anyway, that was a great experience. And well, let me see. I kind of lost my track there where I was going to go with that. But let me just talk about the basics of photography. First of all, if you're using a regular, like a DSLR or a digital camera nowadays, you're going to be shooting in manual mode, not automatic mode, because auto won't work at night. And there's a couple of things to understand about that. First, there's a thing called, they sometimes call it ISO or ISO. That stood in the past, I think it was for International Organization of Standards or something like that. And in the old days of film photography, if you remember, the ISO had to do with how sensitive the film was to light. So you'd have to go out and buy an actual roll of film that said ISO 100. That was for daylight photography, usually bright stuff. You could get ISO 400 or 800 for maybe indoor photography that wasn't quite as bright. And you had to buy a whole roll of film at that ISO and load your camera, and you had to shoot that whole roll of film. And then if you wanted to change it, you had to change the roll of film and get a different speed if you needed it for indoor or outdoor. Nowadays, with the digital cameras, you can change that with just a flip of a switch on the camera. And you can do it between photos very easily. So that's got to do with the sensitivity of the film to light. And in a digital camera, you can change the sensitivity of this digital sensor, which is the film nowadays, just by flipping a switch in the camera. So you're changing the ISO instantly in that camera by doing that. One thing about that to remember is that the lower the ISO, like closer to 100, the less sensitive it is to light, but the clearer the image is. So for daylight photography, you'd use an ISO 100. For nighttime photography, and it's changed nowadays with all the digital cameras that can go quite a bit higher ISO than we used to be able to do. But I remember shooting ISOs of anywhere from 4,000 to 10,000 or so at night at C5 events. And that was not grainy at all. But if you get much higher than that, it can get a little bit grainy. But the cameras nowadays are so amazing because I can take a photo at night of a CE5 event, and then using a raw film processor, I can take that raw image and change the ISO so that it becomes a daylight image. So even though you originally took the picture and got a nighttime photo, you can take it in a raw image processor and move it so that it becomes almost a daytime shot. And you can see details in the picture that you couldn't see with your eye when you were there. And that's truly amazing. It's groundbreaking, groundbreaking stuff, really. Then we talk, so the ISO is one setting on the camera that you're going to deal with. Aperture is another. Aperture has to do with the how wide open your lens is. The wider it is, the more light it lets in, the smaller, less light. Usually for C5 at night, we're shooting what they call wide open, or a low aperture, they call it, so that it's a wide open lens for the most light. Shutter speed we'll talk about just briefly. And there's a difference in shutter speed between regular photography and then film video shooting. We do both at C5 events. But the shutter speed control for a film could be an entire discussion on its own. So we won't go into that tonight, but I will talk just briefly about it here, because most of the pictures we're taking out under the stars are several seconds long, at least, usually 5 to 15 seconds long. So you're opening the shutter of the camera and it's staying open for that long in order to gather enough light to make a photo, and then it closes itself. A couple of things about that. When you're taking a photo at night, you have to have a way to press the button on that camera without it shaking. And I'll show you a picture here. Let me see if I can share to get this picture. Share screen, desktop. Let's see if this works, you guys. Are you guys seeing my desktop by any chance, or no? You are? Okay. Let's see this picture. Can you see that picture?
Yes, we can.
Okay, perfect. Now, this is a picture of a star field with an older digital camera that I had. And so all these little red dots are kind of just noise on the sensor. It was a bad sensor at night, really, an old camera that I had. But look at these stars that have this curve here, all right? That is classic shutter, a camera bump is what they call it. And what happens is you're taking about a 5-second exposure. To start the picture, if you press the button on the camera, when you let go of that button, it's already filming. And just the fact of you letting go of the button, no matter how softly you do it, it causes the camera to move, and you can get a photo like this. And it took us a while to figure out why it only occurred on certain stars and others it didn't. Like this one, if you can see my mouse pointer, it didn't affect this one, but it affected these. So looking at this, you might think it's a fleet of UFOs flying by with the stars in the background. But what's happening here really is that, remember, you're taking a several second photo. And if you took this same photo with maybe 1 second, only the brightest stars would show up. Everything else would be black and not showing at all. You took it for 2 seconds, you'd see a few more stars, and on up to 5 or 6 seconds where you see what you have here. Well, the key is only the brightest stars are bright enough to expose on the film during the time that it was shaking, which was a fraction of a second. So the lighter stars never exposed yet. And then once you let go of the button, the camera shakes, these expose, and then the camera is still for the rest of the 5 seconds, where the rest of the stars then expose normally. So it's a little bit tricky because you can get some stars that suddenly look like, and you can get some weird shapes. This one's pretty docile with the shake here. Let me see if I've got, this one might show a little different. Can you see that? You can see kind of double stars on some of them and a shake. That's classic shake. So if you get something like that at night, you know that it's a shaking camera. Also, one last thing for the basic introduction is white balance on the camera. Most of your cameras nowadays can automatically adjust if you're taking photos under like a fluorescent light as opposed to outdoor sunlight, because it makes a difference in the colors. And they're always set on auto. And if you leave it on auto and you go into night photography and you're taking photos, and if for whatever reason the camera decides to change the white balance on a particular photo, it looks at whatever parameters it uses to decide. And if it changes it on you, you'll find all of a sudden you get a picture that's totally different than the rest in color. And you say, whoa, what happened here? It's an interdimensional bubble opening up. What's going on? It's just your white balance changing. So what I always do is on the camera, I'll set the white balance to manual, usually to daylight. And that will stop that from happening. And you can always change that in post later when you get into it. Okay, now, I know maybe not everybody's a photographer here. Maybe we've got some expert photographers and people that could explain this a lot better than me. But for now, that's kind of a basic introduction to the details of operating the camera. Let me see. A couple of things that you're going to want in the field for your photography. One is a bag. Now, Marcel is excellent at this because he actually took a bag, cut out foam and cut out inserts for everything, including his magnetometer and cameras and everything, so that he could take one look at that in the field and know if he lost anything or if he left anything behind. And that's important because a lot of the equipment's expensive and you don't want to lose it in the field somewhere. I almost left a magnetometer on top of one of the camping sites at Joshua Tree one year. And after that, I took Marcel's advice and got it back. I just got I didn't build my own. I just got a camera bag that has different sections where you can put things. And that way you can see right away if you're forgetting anything on site. A couple other things you're going to need. One is gaffer's tape. And the issue with that is on most of the cameras today, they've got little lights and things that will come on while you're taking pictures. And at an expedition or any C5 event, you really want to cover those up, because somebody across the circle will be taking a picture and they'll see this light appear and say, oh, what's that? And it's distracting. And especially if you're at a Dr. Gur expedition, you'll definitely want to turn off the screen in the back, which is just a setting in the camera, and make sure that none of the lights, if you can't turn them off, you cover them with gaffer's tape. The gaffer's tape you can get very cheaply online, but it usually comes in huge rolls. So what I did was I took a little bit of the gaffer's tape and just wrapped it around my bottle of lens cleaner, which you'll have to have, and a little napkin to clean your lens out in the field, because you're always quickly changing lenses in the dark and you can't always see if that lens is compromised or not. So you want something like this. They make the little wipes you can buy to wipe it, and they work well too, but then you got to throw away the little thing the wipe came in, and you end up with a pocket full of those overnight. I find it's just easier to have a little towel and a spray cleaner. But the gaffer's tape is just black tape. And the cool thing about gaffer's tape is it won't leave any mark on your camera. Now, the first year I did this, I used electrical tape. Big mistake, let me tell you, that'll leave all kinds of gooey glue and stuff all over your camera and your lens, so you don't want that. So gaffer's tape and some cleaning solution for your lens, very good things to have. Now, a couple of pictures that it seems like most of the events that I go to nowadays, I get somebody that will show me a picture like this. Can you guys see this picture? I think you can. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. This is a picture taken in a park of some people. There are orbs all over.
We can't see it yet.
You can't see it yet? Let's see. Oh, let me share it. Here a second. I didn't share it again. Let's see if I can do that. Share screen. Share. Okay, now how about now?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll zoom in a little bit. You can see these orbs that are here, but you can also tell from the picture that it's using a flash because of how bright everything is here. And here's the thing, there are orbs and there are pictures of orbs. I've seen them that are real, and you can even see orbs with your eyes without the camera, and they're certainly real. However, there is a way in photography to make these orbs appear, and you can do it yourself to test this. And the thing is, there's no way to tell if these are real orbs or if they're the fake ones. So anytime I see a picture with a flash like this and orbs, you really have to discount it, because even if it was real, you can't tell. There's no way to know the difference. What's happening here photographically is that if there is pollen in the air that you can't see, or dust, tiny little minuscule particles of pollen flying through the air, and it flies through the air in huge clouds. If you've ever been able to see that on film, I saw it one night on an infrared camera that picked it up. It's amazing. But these little dots of pollen are very close to the lens. We're talking an inch or two away from your camera, but they're out of focus because the camera's focusing in the distance. And that makes the out of focus particles very close to the lens appear like orbs. So that's a very common thing. Now, I'm not saying that there aren't real orbs. Please understand me, there are orbs. And I've got a friend that's got a picture of one that he took a video of with no flash. And so they do exist. All I'm saying is, from a photographer's standpoint, if you show this to a professional photographer and tell him it's ET, he's going to laugh at you, because he's going to say, well, I can make that photo easily. And you can do the photo yourself if you don't believe me, by taking your cell phone and into your backyard one night, kind of aim it up towards a tree or something, but then hold it down close to the ground and slap the ground and get some dust going, and take a few photos with the camera focusing in the distance through that cloud of dust, and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about there. So that's kind of one example of stuff that you can get accidentally, so that everybody should be aware of when you're doing these photographs. Now the next picture I'll show you, you guys have probably seen this. This was taken by Linda at Mount Shasta. I think this was a couple of years ago at an advanced Dr. Greer expedition. And the thing about this picture is she set it up to take the picture of the Milky Way, which you see here. And then she asked in meditation during the contact for the ETs to please help her get a photo that would show the beauty of contact. And this is what she got. Now at that contact event, well, let me show you a couple of things about this photo first. Obviously this is the item of interest. This is about a 15-second exposure. And anytime you're taking a long exposure photograph, you can see a trail where there was a light. So you can see it traveled up here, but you can actually follow it all the way back to over here and see where it comes in. It goes between the trees and the group here. This is not something out in orbit. It goes between the trees and the group, comes out, does a little bit of a 180 off screen, and comes back and probably stopped here. Now 2 days before she got this photo, the entire group saw this object that came flying over the group and stopped, and then it winked out and disappeared. And we had several people with very high quality night vision goggles looking at it, and they said it was actually gone. It didn't just turn a light off. There was nothing there. And then about a minute later, 2 fighter jets flew over Mount Shasta, and we hadn't seen airplanes in hours and days out there, really. And 2 fighter jets came over and flew exactly where it had winked out and went over the top of us. So it had to wink out when the military showed up. However, it came back and we were able to get this photo. And it's a little difficult to see. Let me see if I can zoom in, but in this photo, there's a lot more going on. If you look out here, you can see trails of other objects. You may not be able to see this. Like here's a big one. You may not be able to see this on the video conference software here, but I think give you an idea. Can you see that?
Yeah, it's visible.
Yeah. So that was a 15-second exposure. And by the way, obviously these are not handheld photos. You have to have a tripod as part of your equipment. And I can show you on a tripod what you want to look for. A couple of things I found that are very important. One is, and I think all tripods have this, but I'm not sure, so I'll just show you. On mine, if you look at the head here, there's a little cutout. And what that allows you to do is to rotate the camera all the way to the 90-degree up position where you can take photos directly above you. You see how that rotates? See, the camera would sit up here and it can rotate. If that little notch wasn't there, so if you get a tripod without a notch, you'd be limited to about 30 degrees up. And at a C5 event, especially shooting video, a lot of times you're shooting video directly overhead. So having that notch is important. And like I said, it may be on every tripod for all I know, but that's something I would really look for. The second thing, a lot of tripods, they have either a rotating dial to open the, let me see if we can show you this. You can rotate this to extend the leg. A lot of them have little levers. And there's a lot of talk online about the levers being better because they're easier. But I got this one because it was what was available. And I found that using one hand, you can quickly tighten all 3 very easily so that it's not an issue. And usually it's about a half a turn. Like right now it's tight. I can go half a turn all at once and undo the entire leg, and then very easily with half a turn, tighten it back so that it works. So I would say if you just have one with the rotating dial, it's gonna work fine. If you want one with the levers, either one will work. It doesn't really matter. But don't let somebody sell you a more expensive one just because it has levers instead of these. These work just fine. And one last thing I'll tell you is this part is the most important, I think. Right on the bottom of the tripod, there's a little hook that you can screw in. And the reason you want that is A lot of C5 events are obviously out in nature, and there's a lot of wind sometimes, and you've got to have a sturdy tripod to take these photos. And that means either buying a super heavy tripod to carry with you, or a lighter weight tripod like this with a hook that you can hang a weight on. Because almost any tripod, once you get it set up properly and you put a heavy enough weight here, and I usually just hang my camera bag there, which I'm carrying with me anyway, and it keeps that off the ground as well. Hang that, and that gives your tripod a nice, firm, stationary platform to take pictures from. And that makes all the difference in the world when you're taking night photographs. So let's see, let me show you another picture here. This is interesting, this photo. And before I show you that, I'll tell you how we got this photo. Because one of the things we did at the last expedition that I don't know if it's been done before or not, is instead of me holding the camera or on a tripod using a shutter release, you can, let me talk about those for a minute. You obviously don't want to be pressing the button on the camera to take a timed photo because of the reasons we already talked about, right? So a couple of options. You can buy a wireless trigger release that connects to your camera. There are two types. One is an infrared light, which I don't recommend. And the reason I don't recommend it is because if you ever take it to an event where they're using night vision goggles, that infrared little tiny button will look like a sun going off to them in their night vision goggles. And you will really upset people because it distracts them when they're looking for a contact, and you're over there with a bright light going off. Even though you can't see the light, it's very visible in night vision goggles, and it's blindingly visible. It'll stop them from seeing other things, so don't do that. The other option is sometimes cameras will offer a little Bluetooth option that you can connect to the camera and hang a little dongle that hangs off, and a Bluetooth, that will work, okay? Now, what I do on my camera is even simpler. I didn't buy anything additional. If you look on most cameras, they have a, you know, that little timed option that gives you 10 seconds before it takes the picture so you can run around and get in the group. You've seen that probably. Well, yeah. If you look closely, they'll usually have a 2-second option. So what you can do is set your camera at the proper aperture, shutter, and ISO that you want, and get it sturdy on your tripod. And then set a 2-second delay. You can press the button, let go. Now the camera has 2 seconds to stabilize after you let go. Then it opens the shutter itself and takes the photo. And so I don't find that I even need a remote when I do it that way. So you can do it that way without buying anything. But recently what we started doing was, and part of the problem I had was, there's my magnetometer going off. If you hear that going off, that's what that is. I set it up just in case. What you can, oh, so I lost my train of thought there. We were talking about the remote shutter release, and yes, I know. Yes, I know. It's going wild now. Sorry. You can press that with the delay, and it'll take the photo for you without having the shake that you would normally need the release for. Does that make sense? Okay. So anyway, but what I found was at these events, if I'm back standing there having to hit a release or take photos, I can't really, I'm not at the level yet where I can participate in the contact event and do the meditation as well. I find that I'm too distracted with the camera. Now, if you're an expert photographer, you might be able to handle that technology and still participate, but I wasn't able to. So what I did was, there's a thing called an intervalometer, which you can buy, and some cameras have it built in, and mine has it built in, but it allows you to tell the camera to simply take one picture after another. You set all the settings in you want. Say, for instance, I told that I want an 8-second exposure, and I want it to take an 8-second exposure, then save the picture and take an immediate one again after that, just as fast as it can all night long. And after an event, like Dr. Ruth's event in last time at Joshua Tree, I think I ended up with about 3,500 pictures to go through, which causes some other challenges. But what it does, it allows you to have a record every 8 seconds of whatever you're taking a picture of. And that's really cool because it's very easy to go through those pictures and see when something changes, right? And that's what we did, and that's how we got a picture I'll show you in a minute at the one of the really exciting picture we got at the last expedition with Dr. Greer. And one of the things you can do with that, and that we did, was we took the 3,000 pictures, put them in a what's the file sharing service? Well, any of them will work, I guess. But I think it was Dropbox we used. We put it in a Dropbox and gave everybody on the team a link to that, so that everybody on the team could then go through in their spare time and look at photos. And if they see something of interest, they'd make a note, and then we could go through them and look at all the ones with notes. And that's how we found stuff. Simply because one person wouldn't have time to go through 3,000 photos, especially after taking a week off of work to go to an expedition. Then you come home and there's just no time to do that. So this picture we got by doing that. And this one, am I sharing the screen still? Can you see this or no?
No.
Oh, okay, let me share the screen again, sorry. Let's see. Okay, here's the screen, here's the photo. And there are a couple of things of interest in this photo. Let me zoom in first to here. And what do you think this is? I know you can't talk, but think about what you think that might be. And another one here and here. And remember, this is about an 8 or 10 second exposure. So if something's moving in the sky, it could blur or look like a line. So this is definitely something moving in the sky. And I know those of you that have seen this before already know what it is. But airplanes have a red blinking beacon and a white strobe light. And so there's a blink, 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 red, white, red, white, red, white. That's obviously an airplane. So if you get something like this in your photo, you'll know that it's an airplane moving over here. But there's something else we caught in this photo that was really interesting. This picture is taken, by the way, under starlight only. So it's very dark outside. And for years, I've been to different events where people have said they see something that they call scintillating lights near our feet and around us. And we actually caught it on film. I've never seen it on film, but I want to show you something. Over here to the left of the group, just behind the group, is this. Just in the bushes behind us. Can everybody see that? Is that visible? Now, it's not necessarily a line, but remember it's a timed photo. So it could have been an orb or a very, very soft light moving either up or down. We can't tell which direction from the photo, but it changed colors as it went through. And this is no picture anomaly in the camera. This is something that was actually behind the group, showing up as a scintillating light that moved. And they're very, very dim. This is not, it looks bright in this photo because the camera, basically what you're seeing is a starlight photo where people in this group really couldn't even see people across the other side of the group very well. It looks like daylight here, but it's definitely not, okay? This camera is very sensitive. So these lights are very, I don't want to say dim, but they're not a bright light. They're very, like they've been called a scintillating, almost a kind of a pulsing, flashing little light that goes by. And this was easy to see because we had 1,000 photos, well, not 1,000, but we probably had 400 photos of this exact same scene that night taken. And we were able to go through them quickly. And you can see the airplanes moving across the sky, but then all of a sudden this appears, you can see it in the photo and realize, hey, that's something different. That's something of interest. So that's one thing we've done recently that has really made it easier to find stuff, taking these series of photos. And let me show you another one that was the same thing, a series of photos that was taken, and we, okay, you might have seen this photo because Serious Disclosure did release this particular one. Let me see. Okay, this one here. Have you guys seen this photo?
You can all speak in, right into the chat.
Or even if you want to undo them, you can. I don't know. Maybe it's better letting them talk. What do you think?
Okay,
But
let's try it. I'll see.
try it and see.
I'll work on it.
That way, if there are any questions, we can cover them too before we run out of time. But anyway, while we're doing that, let me tell you about this photo. This photo was at Joshua Tree last year. And am I still muted there for a second?
Now it's set so that anybody wanting to ask a question can unmute themselves. And we can hear you, Justice.
Okay, hang on a second. I kind of got lost here. I'm off the screen. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, and we can see you.
Let me see if I can get that picture back. Here we go. Okay, this one here. Now, we posted this when it was originally posted. The volunteer that posts it uses one service that then posts it on Facebook and Twitter and all kinds of other places, and it ended up with a pretty low-res version by accident. But we later the next day posted this one. But let me talk about what you're seeing here, okay? That week we were in Joshua Tree, it was exceedingly cold. It was below freezing, I think 2 or 3 of the nights we were there. The week prior to the event, it had been 70 in the day and 50 at night. The week after the event, 70 in the day, 50 at night. The week we were there, it dropped to like 50 in the day and like the high 20s a couple of the nights. And it was very cold. So we decided to have the circle near the house. Here's the house we rented, and here's the circle. Now, the camera was taking pictures all night long. Every 10 seconds, it would take an 8-second exposure, right? So let me show you. I'm going to show you 3 pictures in a series. Here's the first picture, if you can see, of the house. And you can see the chairs are empty, okay? Take a look at the chairs. See, they're all empty chairs. And this is under starlight. You couldn't see this with your normal eye. The camera picked this up. Now, this light you see in the corner, that's somebody with a flashlight walking out of the house. They're going to walk behind these empty chairs over to this chair to get something and then go back into the house, right? So you don't see them. They're invisible because remember, they're not shining the light at themselves and they're only illuminated by starlight. And since they're moving, there's not enough of an exposure to see them. You can see the chairs because they're all still and they stayed in the same position for 8 seconds or whatever, which was enough starlight for an exposure. Here's the first picture as they walk out. Now look closely at the next picture, which I know you've seen online probably. A lot of people complained about this, but I just want to show you what this really is. Now in this picture, you see they walked behind the chairs, between the fence and the chairs, but you look here along the top of the chairs, right where the light went. In these two, there's something physically blocking that light. See the light here? It's blocked here, and there's a shadow. And it's blocked here, and there's a shadow, almost like a silhouette. The light behind them illuminated them. So if these are ETs, and I'm not saying they are, but if they are, they have technology that is invisible to us with reflected light. But I think sometimes with silhouettes, they cause a little bit of a shadow. You might have heard people talk about maybe shadow figures or something like that. Maybe that's what this is. Maybe it isn't. I don't know. But something scientifically, physically had to block the light here. And if you look at it closely, it's actually a very interesting shaped head. You can see kind of, maybe it's a mask, I don't know, but a pointed type beak head, possibly. You can see kind of an ear and maybe a big shield here or eyes, maybe, I'm not sure, and an elongated head. This one is blurry because it most likely moved during the exposure. And if it moved, it wouldn't be as visible, just like the person walking behind is invisible because they weren't exposed long enough in one position, where this one probably sat still for the whole time and we got a good exposure of that. And then if you look at the image taken immediately after that, you can see here's the person getting something out of their bag. And unfortunately, I don't have, here we go, yeah, you can see it. You can look and see these chairs are empty. This was taken just seconds after the picture you just saw. The time it took that person to walk from here to here is how long after this picture was taken. So we got that picture by the same method of taking, 800 pictures a night with the camera, just shooting one after the other. A couple of things I'm gonna go through quickly. I know we're running short on time already. Sometimes you get an urge to take a photo. And a couple of things I'll tell you is one, whenever you get to a C5 event, before it gets dark, and you should get there before dark if you can, to kind of get a lay of the land, take a few photos around you to see what's there, because a lot of times the ETs will be there when you show up already. And especially if you've done what you should and meditate the few days prior and invite them to your event, they'll already be there. And we've got several pictures like that. I don't know if I have one here that I can show you quickly. I think Marcel showed one last time when he took it at, I think it was Contact in the Desert. We were all rented a house, and he took a few photos, and there was a UFO flying by there, or what looked to be one. When I was leaving the Joshua Tree retreat recently, I was driving down the road and I got the urge to take a picture immediately, but I didn't have my camera with me. It was in the back seat, and I was so upset with myself that I pulled over on this busy freeway and got out in the back seat and got my camera out, got it all set up and put it next to the driver's seat. And then I continued driving. And about 10 minutes later, I got the urge to take a photo, and I just aimed the camera out the window and literally snapped this photo. Now, I'll show you an enlargement in a minute, but if you look right here, you can see there's an object in the sky. Let me zoom in a little bit more. Can you see this? There's an object there.
Oh, yes.
And I've been flying airplanes all my life. That's not an airplane or helicopter or blimp. I'm not sure what that is, but there was definitely an object in the photo. And I might have an enlargement. Here we go. This is a 300% enlargement. I don't know if it's any larger on the screen or not. There's the magnetometer going off. Do you hear that? But you can, in this one, you can almost see a bell shape bottom with kind of a curved inner here and a dome top. And it's at a 45-degree angle, just literally shooting out of the area. Here's a picture that Una took. Una, maybe you can talk about this. This was at the New Zealand event recently. This is a picture of the team setting up. And if you look over here, I'm going to show you an enlargement, but look in this area here. Here's a larger photo that I can zoom in on a little bit. Look in the rocks at this item. Una, do you want to talk about that? Tell them, you guys, you said you had just come from this area and there's nothing up there, right?
Yeah, we came from over there, and this area is vast. There's no one there. It was evening. Yeah. What can I say? I don't know what it is, but it certainly wasn't anything man-made.
Yeah, it looked like a ship or something perched there, maybe, I don't know, but very interesting. So take pictures around your C5 sites when you get there. We've got a lot of pictures like that where we just thought we were getting trees and sunsets, and we ended up with some pretty spectacular photos. So look at that, and let me see what other interesting things I can get you here real quick before we open this up for questions. I know that Marcel mentioned last time, this is just for fun, that Merkaba in New Zealand, that was the Merkaba. This is taken from the house we were in, and that's the Merkaba down below. And you can see our group set up there in the Merkaba. And that was a beautiful spot. Just a lot of fun there in New Zealand. And if you get a chance to go to any of these events, either with Una or with Jeremy in New Zealand, they're just wonderful, wonderful events. Let me take a quick look at my notes. I know I've kind of jumped all over the place, and I apologize for that. But I think I've covered the basics of what I wanted to cover. And I think that's all the pictures that I've got here that I can show easily. But so what do you guys think about that? What kind of questions do you have? Because I'm not a professional photographer, but I'll be glad to share what I do know. Is it possible, Una, maybe to unmute them now? And we can.
Yes, if you have a question, and please take this chance, unmute yourself and start speaking.
Okay.
Hey, Justice.
Hey.
Hey, mate. It's Rob from the UK. How are you?
Rob, I've heard lots of good things about you.
All good, I hope.
Oh, yes. Can't wait to meet you.
My question for you, Justice, is have you ever seen anything flying your plane?
Well, I tell you, that is a very good question, and I get that a lot. And I'll tell you a couple of things about that. I only became interested in this topic about 4 years ago. So anything that I might have seen before that, I was either not looking or would have blown off and thought it was something else. And in the 4 years that I have been flying, I have not. However, I've flown with several pilots that have. And one of the most amazing stories, if we've got a moment, I know we're running short on time. I'll share
absolutely.
quickly.
Take your time. Take your time,
Okay.
Justice. We still have time.
Okay. Well, I don't know how many of you remember, I forget when this was. I want to say maybe 10 years ago, 15 years ago, maybe. There was a UFO that hovered over the top of Chicago O'Hare, over Terminal E, the United Airlines area there. You guys remember that? Maybe you saw that. Well, let me tell you a couple things about that first. When it first happened, they had some really good photos out of it on the internet. Those photos quickly disappeared within a week or so, and they were replaced with obviously fake stuff that you could look at and say that's fake. And it was just an attempt to kind of silence that particular event. But I flew with a pilot at the airline I worked for that told me that the day before that event happened, it was very cloudy in Chicago, lots of weather, and he was in the clouds where you couldn't really see another plane, but you could see lights if they got near you. And he's flying out over the lake east of Chicago, being vectored onto to the runway to land at Chicago there. And the last turn was the turn towards the runway. But as the controller gave him that turn, he came back and said, hey, there are lights where you're vectoring me. There's an airplane there. I can't, do you have any traffic there? Because he was a little worried that he could see lights, because if he could see lights in foggy weather, it's pretty close. And when you're doing 300 miles an hour, it makes you nervous. And so he said, do you have any traffic there? And the controller said, no, there was no traffic at all. And then a United flight who was right behind him came on the radio and said, hey, Tower, we see it too. There's something big there. And right as he said that, this captain I flew with was the first captain that saw it. He said that those lights just went vertical, just boom, instant. Not a slow fly away, but it was just slow enough he could see which direction it went, but it just like boom, and was gone. And so they vectored on and it landed. The very next day, that event happened where this huge disc-shaped UFO hovered over United's Terminal E there at Chicago O'Hare. And when it left there was an overcast layer of clouds, and all the employees were on the radio saying, hey, look at this, what's this disc flying over at Terminal E? And when it left a hole in the cloud deck, overcast, that lasted for like half an hour or so, just a hole there as it went up and left. So I had that happen. Also, I flew with a captain that was flying down in Southwest Texas years and years ago. And we're all on the same frequency, and when it's clear weather, you can see for 400 or 500 miles easily, and he can see all the planes in the area, and you're on the same center of control frequency talking, so you can all hear each other. And he said there was this one airplane out in front of him that suddenly went from his 12 o'clock like that to like his 9 o'clock position over here on his left. And he said that was no airplane. He didn't know how far away it was, so he couldn't judge the distance, but it went boom like this. And most airplanes at a distance are blinking and moving like this, This thing just went and was there. And so it sat there and he watched it, and pretty soon it went, came right back out towards the front. And then somebody else on the frequency came on and said, are you guys seeing this? And somebody else said, yes, we are. And then it went like that over to the other side. And then it just took off and was gone in the distance. They couldn't see it. But probably half a dozen pilots that night, including the guy that I was flying with, tell me they saw that. Once they find out I'm interested in this topic, they're more than willing to share what they've seen. So there are lots of stories out there. And that's one of the things that got me back interested in this after a long time, raising family and starting jobs and stuff where I was away from it. So a very good question though, Rob.
Okay, thanks, buddy. I'll see you in the field sometime.
I hope so, Rob. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. See you later, buddy. Bye.
Okay, see ya. Well, any other questions, please feel free to ask if you want. Well, I can tell you, oh, go ahead. Hi.
Hi.
Who do we have here?
Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Ona. Thank to you. And I would like to ask you if there will be in the future any possibility to learn about the different objects that we might see in the sky, because I understand that there can be a lot of confusion at every level. So general understanding about how a satellite might look like and different objects, so that we can feel more confident.
Absolutely, that's a great idea, and I think we should definitely do that, because there's so many objects in the sky, everything from normal airplane stuff to bugs that can fly on infrared and look like UFOs, to actual ET craft, to satellites, to iridium flares, to meteor showers. Just there's all kinds of stuff. And the cool thing about this is, once you start going out into nature, you start experiencing this stuff. And if you've got a simple star map on your iPad or device, you can literally nowadays just point it at the sky and it'll show you what's there. So if you pointed at the sky and what you're looking at is on the chart, it's probably not ET, right? So that's a great way to learn, is just go out and start doing it. And it's a beautiful time too. When you go out and spend time under the stars with a group of people and you meditate on this higher consciousness and love and contact, it sets up this field around you that is just, the only word I can say is intoxicating. It's really just a beautiful experience. And so just going out and doing that is a great way to learn. So I think it's a great idea to have a meeting maybe here and talk about that in the future. I think you'd asked me to talk about satellites anyway at one point, right?
That's right. Justice very often is the person on the team with that satellite chart. And being a pilot, you of course have seen a lot and know the sky, about weather, about satellites, etc. I also have to say, when we were in New Zealand, we saw the Elon Musk satellites, like a string of pearls just coming out over the sky. Quite amazing. So yes, Julia's from Italy. We will ask Justice to come back. I hope he will.
Definitely. Thank you for the question. Very good question. Very good. Well, I'm so excited for you. It looks like you're going to have a wonderful team out there in Europe, or lots of teams maybe setting up all over Europe and doing this. That's really exciting to see. I love it.
Yes. Thank you, Ricky, for the thumbs up. Yes. And maybe, Ricky, you'll come and visit us. Any other questions?
Yes, I would like to ask, is there any more direct contact you have experienced yourself or know of?
Is there any other direct contact? Yes, and I've experienced things, and I can certainly share those, but there are people on the teams that have had much more direct contact than I've had. And typically it's through the meditation technique. They go into a deep meditation and have an experience in consciousness with the ETs. And that sometimes extends then to seeing things in 3D, the physical realm as well. And I know that there's several on the team that have had that. My contact, because to be honest, I'm still a student of meditation and learning this. And I have a very technical job that requires a lot of study and memorization. And because of that, I've got a very active brain that's constantly yelling at me. And sometimes I find it more challenging than others on the team to drop into this peaceful state of consciousness. And don't get me wrong, I can still do it, and I see things as well. But there are many others on the team. I can think of 3 or 4 right now. I don't know if any of them are here and want to share, but that have had great experiences with direct contact. And the ETs are just waiting for us, really. You know, Dr. Guru said they're literally waiting for us to reach out to make contact, and they're anxious to work with people and make that contact. So if it's something you want and you approach it with the right intention and without fear, because fear is the killer of all things. Fear will stop your meditative technique from working, which will eventually stop your contact, most likely. And the problem with that is all of us on this planet, no matter what our background, we've been subjected to 70 years of Hollywood fear and disinformation, literally. And it's difficult to put that aside and to go in to do this. But it's something that once you do it, you'll find it to be very liberating. I love the fact that you know, I used to be into ufology years ago, and I love the fact that I can drop all of that, drop my ego, drop all of the human expectations, all of this, and go into a state of unity consciousness where there is no fear, and you're connecting with all life in the universe. And contact will definitely happen. And I'm sure that as you start this process, you'll find that as well. In my own history, I'll just tell you briefly, then I'll go on. When I first started, because I couldn't get a vacation time to coincide with a group meeting, I just did it myself. And for 2 years, I was doing CE5 on my own. I started in my backyard. And the first time I played those tones, I was terrified. I'm not afraid to tell you. I went in the backyard and I played those tones, and I was really looking over my back and my shoulder and shining my flashlight in every corner of the yard, because I was just learning about this. And I didn't realize what I truly was, what each of us truly are, and that there's no need to be afraid. But we started that process, and I remember one time, I can tell you this also, the ETs will follow your family line or back to where you live, if you want them to, and look at the people that you're with. And I remember one night, I'd been at we started these CE5s in Texas, and we went out, and we were out overnight, but my wife, God bless her, really takes on a task with 3 children while I'm away, 3 young children at that. So she would volunteer to watch the kids while I was away doing this. And I could not have done it without her help, obviously. But one night we were out doing the meditation, and she had been studying with me at home. And so she went to bed and played Dr. Greer's Prayer for Earth, which is one of my all-time favorite meditations. It's a beautiful meditation that ends in a prayer for Gaia and for our civilization, and it's truly beautiful. But she played that as she went to sleep. Well, she woke up in the middle of the night with a fairly short light being standing at the end of her bed. And as soon as she kind of said, "Is this real?" and blinked her eyes and sat up, it quickly faded and disappeared. And she was at this point in her development where she said, "Don't be afraid. I'm not afraid. You're welcome, and we love you. And if you're really here, can you let me know somehow?" And there were 3 loud knocks on the wall across from the bed. And later, you know, through different events with Dr. Guru, I learned that the 3 knocks were commonly used to say, "We are here." A lot of times that'll come across through the magnetometer or through some other method. But she had that experience that night. And so this was ETs that were not only looking into our group, but following us back home and looking at everybody. So it's a beautiful thing, and there's nothing at all to be afraid of. But it's something that you want to make sure that you have the proper intention going in, and really work on dropping the ego and the fear, because that'll just get in your way. But if you can drop that, this could happen very fast, and you could start having some real amazing and beautiful contact experiences.
Yeah, let me
Thank you.
jump in there. And it's very often we build that within ourselves during the week that we're out together, and I often stay longer. And that's where I've had my closest contacts, where I've actually seen with Michael from London. We saw 2 spacecraft land. We saw them physically land 300 meters from where we were. And another time, also at the end of a gathering, I saw 2 physical, huge ETs standing maybe 10 meters from me. Yes. Any other questions or comments?
I just would like to say we were in New Zealand, Una and I, and I don't know who else was there, but the last night we did CE5 was in a rainstorm, and the wind was blowing, so we did it indoors. And what was really amazing at that point indoors is that we had ET inside the room with us, and we could hear it. We heard a voice over by the piano area from my vantage point. So we heard this voice come on, and then the lights went out, the radar detector went off, and my magnetometer started going. And we got that all on recording. And the magnetometer went on for about, the whole time, about 40 minutes. And then our radios were also chiming in. And the radios we had are set on the same frequencies. I think maybe 1 or 2 are in different frequencies, but they were also coming on and off to confirm, just like what Justice was experiencing today with his magnetometer. So it's really interactive, and that was close. I mean, that was right inside the room, so you can't get any closer than that. Although it wasn't completely physically manifest, that might have been a little bit too overwhelming with some of the people there, myself probably too. But anyway, yeah, and another thing, when I was flying out there from Denver to San Francisco, I had asked ET to follow me, and I meditated before and asked him to put a probe outside my house. And then when I get ready to leave, I said, okay, I'm going, and have him follow me. And so I was on the airplane, and it was just about sunset, and I was saying, well, I wonder if ET's here. I wonder if they're following me. And all of a sudden I looked over the horizon, the sun was just setting, coming through the clouds. And I saw this big craft come in. It was one of these golden orange jobs, It flared up, but it was about 10 times as bright as an aircraft landing light, 10 times the size. So then it went off, and then another one came up and did the same thing, right in the clouds. And there wasn't any, you still hear me? There wasn't any aircraft in the area. So that's all I would like to say about that, I guess.
Yeah, thank you very much, Ricky. Yes, there are so many stories, and I know many of you have stories very similar, because I see lots of friends, people who have been out with me from Germany and Switzerland and the US. Yes, there's Pat, of course, and Damian and Baba and oh gosh, I can't even mention all the names. And we've got Israel here and Italy here. Please, feel free, speak up, join in, ask questions.
Hello.
Hi, Julia.
Hey.
Sorry, I'm usually very shy, but tonight I'm really trying to do my best. Also with my English, I apologize if I make mistakes. Anyways, I was very moved, Justice, by the comment that you made about asking permission. And I think that it's beautiful if personally, I try to shift my perception from the phenomenon to being aware and more conscious that we are interacting with people. And so I would continue the questions that I asked you before by asking you again, and to anybody here, if would be fair to say that there is a way also to discern whether we are seeing something that is not ET from being aware that we are really having contact through our emotions, meaning that sometimes you see something in the sky that goes right through your heart area, your physical system just goes through your body, and you suddenly are buzzing or you're feeling something, and it's as if you have a confirmation that there is something true that you are having contact with. I don't know if my English makes sense. Sorry.
Your English is beautiful, and it's much better than my Italian. I commend you for that. That is a wonderful question, and it really goes to the heart of what we're doing. I love how you said that we're not just making contact with a vehicle or looking at a vehicle. We're talking to people here. I think of these as people from other planets. Some of them may look very much like us. Others may look nothing like us at all. But like Dr. Greer says, we have that consciousness in common. And that really is a beautiful aspect to this. And I'll just say my answer briefly, because there are others here like Ricky and others that would be able to answer that a lot better, with a lot more experience than I have. However, I can tell you in my personal experience, when I've seen something that was ET, there was an instant elation in my heart, an instant love that you feel and you know on a knowing level. That's them. And when I see things that are man-made, I don't get any kind of an emotional feeling with them at all. It's just, then it is just an object that's there, right? And that's really the best way I can explain it. And each person is probably different. In my case, during a lot of the events, I would just know something. Other people would have an emotional response. Other people would see something. A lot of times I wouldn't see things others were seeing, but I would know it was there. And each of us is different. And the only way to know how or what works for you is to go out in the field and do this. I can tell you that the only time that I had a human intervention, I knew it because it caused emotions that they weren't scary, but they weren't loving. And that was a human interference event that we had one night at one of Dr. Greer's events. And I can tell you right now that you won't have that at your events. You know, going to a Dr. Greer event is a little bit special in that there's a lot of suppression that goes on when he's in the area, and you have the chance to experience something like that. Nothing to be afraid of, but it's something to be aware of. Now, in all the years we've done events at CE5 Texas, we've never had anything like that. Because when you go out on your own or with a small group, there's no attempt by the NSA or anybody to come shut you down. But they do at Dr. Greer events, okay? And you can still have beautiful contact at a Dr. Greer event, don't get me wrong. I've had very loving, and that's why I go to them. But you won't have to worry about that at your own events. But does anybody else want to, maybe Ricky or anybody else want to add to that? How do you know what's ET and what's not?
Maybe Pat can say something to that. Would you like to, Pat?
Yeah, you know, I would say every single time that I've had any interaction, of course, the interaction with ET beings is always incredibly loving. It's just, it's really overwhelming. It brings you to tears sometimes. There's no mistaking that feeling. I have had interaction with other, what I would call interdimensional beings who may be, you know, people who have passed. You know, there are a lot of interdimensional beings that you know, they're just not in this 3D dimension. Those have all been, you know, they have a different feel. It's not that tremendously loving feel, but it's so characteristic of an ET interaction. But they were all fine. I'm trying to think if I've ever had any that I could discern was, I think like Justice, like you've said, there have been a few times where I have known that the energy I was sensing was more human and more from a suppression, you know, coming from suppression. But even with that, you know, I just fill my heart with love, and then basically that pretty well takes care of it. The light is always stronger than the dark.
I'd like to add something in a comment. In my experience, I found out that the contacts are general for everyone to see. But then after the initial contact is made, it becomes directional, depending on the person's state of being. And that's where the fear factor, you know, the intent is number one, or everyone's intent is. But then when you get to the threshold of fear, you know, where people have reactions for things that they've experienced in their past, or what's been scripted from the media or from movies and things that they've seen, and all of a sudden you get that sort of tripping into your head too. Then it becomes like a Polaroid filter. So it's filtered out and becomes directional. And it depends on how you connect, and if you have what we call a lock-on to the craft and the beings inside the craft. So the experiences are different, and not all of us are going to have that same experience, because it becomes directional to the people who are really connected with the craft. And then they also focus on other people who need that positive reinforcement. So that's part of the confirmation process, where the witnesses, all of us, see the major occurrence event, and we all say, oh, wow, that's it. And then you get excited about it. I know I always do. But then it becomes directional. And then that Polaroid directional event is when you have the buddy system, and your buddy, or the person that's sitting next to you, who isn't out of the field range that's been narrowed down for the direct contact, you can experience that as well. So it covers a wide spectrum, and how the experiences are experienced by different people depends on the individual state of beingness, their awareness, how much they project themselves out, and whether or not they're going to block it from being analytical. Because if you're analytical, you'll take that and say, well, it could be this, could be that. By the time you oscillate and vacillate back and forth between the possibilities, you missed out on the experience. So the best thing to do is just have the experience, go with it, go with the flow, have it come into you. Then after the event, you can talk it over in consultation with each other. So that's pretty much all I would like to add to it.
Thank you, Ricky. We have Aurea who would like to share her experience. Aurea is from Israel, and there's a very active CE5 group in Israel.
So hi, everybody. I want to talk about my personal experiences. I would like to correct Una. There is a group here in Israel, but I've not been active with them. Is it still okay for me to share my personal experiences?
Oh, absolutely.
Thank you. Okay, so I want to share two experiences. One of them was when I did C5 by myself here in northern Israel. It was in a global C5 event. These are published on Facebook. I took a pillow and I just went out of a small village that I stayed in and went out into the wilderness where they herd cows. I sat in the middle of the road and I did the protocol the way I know it to be. I probably didn't quiet my mind enough. I was very afraid and I didn't know it. And what ended up happening was that I started hearing noises in the bushes that turned into noises of footsteps. And just like Ricky was describing, I was very analytical about it. I thought it could be a wild animal. Now, I couldn't see anything. It was dark, but I would be able to see this being if it was visible, but it wasn't visible. And I just sat there listening to the footsteps, feeling my heart beating like so fast and feeling this fear, like I can't calm my body down and I can't bring myself to communicate with this being. I'm paralyzed. I'm afraid. So after a few minutes, I just felt like I wouldn't be able to do it. So I got up and went back home. And now in this experience, this being was patient. It came towards me and it kept at a distance of about 2 meters. Or I don't know how much feet is, sorry, Americans. It went around me from my right side to the front and then to the left in half a circle. I could hear the footsteps. It was waiting for me. I knew that. I felt that. So that's my experience of an actual extraterrestrial. I didn't feel love because I was in fear, and I know it too. The second experience that I would like to share.
I think, yes, we can still feel the fear that you had. So, and that's very true, that the fear create all sorts of things. And that's why I think it's also wonderful to go out with other people. There's less fear.
Absolutely. Una, can I share, before we go, one last thing here?
Yes.
Let's see. There was one picture I meant to show that I didn't get to. Now, this picture, I think was unpublished. Let me ask, is Brian Turner on the call by any chance?
I don't see him.
He's there? He's not here? Brian is a friend of mine that was also at the Austin expedition with Dr. Greer, and he took a photo that shows what I was talking about. I think their technology does very well at creating like an invisible screen that we can't see them with the light directly at them. But if there's light behind them or reflected off of them, sometimes you can see. And in this picture that shows up. And let me share the screen if I can and show that image quickly, and I'll tell you about that. Share. I only have it in a presentation. I don't know that I can get it any bigger or not, but let's see. Can you guys see this here?
Yes.
I apologize, it might be small on your screen. This is a group sitting in Austin in meditation, and we knew there was an ET in this area. There was a psychic sitting here, and several people in this area said there's an ET there. And when this started happening, the photographer who's standing outside the circle, you can see from the picture, he's over here, turned his camera and set up about a 10-second exposure. And while he was, the camera lens was open, somebody over here took one of those little LED lights, very tiny, dim LED. This is at like midnight, and it's perfectly dark where we're at. And that light that's so bright is one LED. But she shined it in this area and said, is this where you're talking about? Well, look what showed up on the picture. We didn't see this when we were there, but when we looked at the picture a few minutes later, you can see the reflection off of kind of a headpiece here and an arm and a band on his arm, like the left, his right side possibly, if he's facing the group. And this side still invisible with no light reflecting off of it. So they have technology, they can be there. And the thing is that I wanted to say about that is whether, you know, Dr. Gura said this before, whether they show up in a way that you can perceive with your five senses or not, isn't as important. What's important is that these civilizations that have been waiting for us for a very long time to wake up and stop fighting wars and realize we're not alone in the universe and try to make contact, they're going to notice this. They're going to notice us doing CE5 whether we see them or not. And it moves us one step closer to that day, hopefully, where our civilization wakes up and we have open contact. So that's what I wanted to show you there. That was an interesting photo.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite photos. It's because, of course, if you were there, we can still feel that truly great love that was emanated and that was just present within the whole circle. Well, I think it's time to close. Justice, again, thank you so very, very much for doing this. I'm so happy you'll be coming on again in the future to share your amazing beingness and your heart, and touch us with your photography. And
thank you so much, and I love to you all. Thank you very much.
And thank you everyone for being here, from Texas to New York, Josh, I guess, to the whole of Europe, all the way to Israel. Yeah, thank you very much for being here. If there's anything any of you need or want to ask or so, send me an email, or any comments you want to make, anything, just send an email. Bye for now.
Thank you.
Thank you to everyone.
See you later somewhere.
Bye, Ricky. See ya.
Okay.
I'm going to put 2 links in the comments for the recording. One of them is a.
I don't actually know if they show up in the recording.
Oh, do they? I think they did the last one I saw. If they don't, that's okay too. But one of them is a calculator for figuring your shutter time, which I didn't want to go into because it gets complex. And the other one is a YouTube video about nighttime video shooting, which if you try to do video at your CE5, that'll be very helpful. Oh, wait, you know what?
Justin,
Uh-huh.
I was late getting here today. I'm sorry. I didn't change the time on my car clock. Will this whole thing be recorded to listen to later?
Yes, everything will be recorded, Una, right? And it should be available. It may be a few days before Una gets it up, I imagine, but.
Oh, okay. Thanks a lot.
Just
Absolutely.
one day, and it'll be on our website.
Okay,
So
great.
just check our website archives.
Okay, thanks.
Let me put one more link in, Una, then I'll get off here. I accidentally sent them just to you instead of the group. There we go. Awesome.
Okay, thank you. Thank
Thanks,
you.
Una.
Bye-bye.
Love you guys. Bye.